Friends, greetings from Agra. It is a pleasure to be with you through this distant mode today, but I wish I wasn't unwell so that I could have greeted you in person. Friends, my keynote title is Great Drama is Great Questions. I feel that through this exploration of the theme, Great Drama is Great Questions, I would like to share with you how theatre and dramatics can be made use of in sustainable studies in our respective classrooms, in our interaction with audiences, where we can give the idea of literature shaping life or life shaping literature. I have appended a short epigraph from Salman Rushdie's The Ground Beneath Her Feet to this keynote. Rushdie states, in all the old stories, in different ways, the point is always reached, after which the gods no longer share their lives with mortal men and women. They die or wither away or retire. They vacate the stage and leave us alone upon it, stumbling over our lines. This, the myth's hint, is what a mature civilization is, a place where the gods stop jostling, leaving us free to do our best or worst without their autocratic meddling. Drama or theatre becomes important to sustainable studies because from time immemorial, drama has always had as its epicenter the exploits of man. And whether we talk of the Greek drama of Aeschylus, Euripides, or Sophocles, or of great dramatists like Shakespeare and Marlowe in the Elizabethan times, or we dwell with theatre in the modern parlance, we find there is abundant material which can lend animation and offer a world of experience to anyone interacting with dramatic material in the classroom or elsewhere. It is very significant that the modes of drama have changed from time to time. In the Greek drama, we find that gods occupy an important place. Man is shown as a struggling creature, but who is always ready to defy the gods. Aristotle, in his poetic theory, outlined that in a drama, it is important that the tragic hero must be a man of renown and whose downfall comes on account of the hamartia and who is probably judged according to his actions and according to his will as to what role the gods have assigned him, whether he accepts it in toto or whether he creates an identity for himself. from the Greek drama as we move on during the Renaissance period to the plays of William Shakespeare, we find that we have tremendous amount of material that can go towards the contribution to sustainable studies. Shakespeare was the king of drama in his period, and he changed the idea of tragic flaw to something that had to do with the inherent weakness of man, be it in Julius Caesar, Macbeth, Hamlet, Othello, or any other play for that matter. Shakespeare's dominance is evident from various tributes that have been paid to him by writers from across climes, time, and space. Matthew Arnold said, "Others abide our question, thou art free. We ask and ask, thou smilest and art still, out-topping knowledge. And thou, who didst the stars and sunbeams know, self-schooled, self-scanned, self-honored, self-secure, didst tread on earth unguessed at, better so. All pains the mortal spirit must endure, all weakness which impairs, all griefs which bow, find their soul's speech in that victorious brow." Likewise, Dryden's comment on Shakespeare is again very significant. Dryden stated about Shakespeare, "He was the man who of all modern and perhaps ancient poets had the largest and most comprehensive soul. All the images of nature were still present to him, and he drew them not laboriously but luckily. When he describes anything, you more than see it, you feel it too." Similarly, Samuel Johnson, in his preface to the plays of Shakespeare, makes two important statements. "Nothing pleases long and pleases many but the just representations of general nature. His characters are the genuine progeny of common humanity, such as the world will always supply and observation will always find." To just cite one example, if we take the case of Hamlet, where in a scene where Laertes is going abroad, his father Polonius, though dubbed a fool in Shakespearean terminology, he offers his son some advice. I'll share it with you. "See thou character, give thy thoughts no tongue, nor any unproportioned thought his act. Be thou familiar, but by no means vulgar. Those friends thou hast, and their adoption tried, grapple them to thy soul with hoops of steel, but do not dull thy palm with entertainment of each new hatched, unfledged comrade. Beware of entrance to a quarrel, but being in, bear it that the opposed may beware of thee. Give every man thy ear, but few thy voice. Take each man's censure, but reserve thy judgment. Costly thy habit, as thy purse can buy, but not expressed in fancy, rich, not gaudy. For the apparel oft proclaims the man. Neither a borrower nor a lender be, for loan oft loses both itself and friend, and borrowing dulls the edge of husbandry. This above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day, thou canst not then be false to any man. Friends, if we look at these simple precepts, coming from a great playwright, as an advice from a father to a son, we feel that the entire world which is running after success, probably there couldn't have been any advice available in any book or hundreds of books that are being published every day on soft skills and how to succeed in life. These few lines from Shakespeare, when they are dramatized in any form in the classroom, could provide a very useful idea of success, idea of identity, idea of living as a purposeful human being in the world. Similarly, when we look at from another perspective, Hamlet's soliloquy, to be or not to be, that is the question. Whether it's nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time, the oppressor's wrong, the proud man's contumely, the pangs of despised love, the law's delay, the insolence of office, and the spurns that patient merit of the unworthy takes, when he himself might his quietus make with a bare bodkin. In a matter of a few lines, any student who's studying in the class, when he is given a role to utter maybe these soliloquies, he can himself get an idea of the expression of so many different types of emotions. And similarly, even while teaching Hamlet in a classroom, when I sometimes took speeches and attributed roles to the students to play out, there was one particular instance where Hamlet is probably in the play, we find the scene of Hecuba's lamentation. And when the player is watching, Hamlet is watching that player, and at that scene, he himself says, what is he to Hecuba or Hecuba to him that he should weep for her thus? What would he do? Harry the passion for the wrongs that have been committed. What would he do? He would drown the stage with tears and cling the horrid spear with the general ear. And you find that the idea that you get from here is that the theatre, the one who's playing the role, he has an immediate impact on the viewer. In this case, it is Hamlet, who is himself so deeply moved by it that he begins to understand that what a role playing truly means. Now, if we move on from the Greek theatre to the Shakespearean era, we find that one thing remains common, that the people who are the dramatis personae, they are basically from the noble class, from the higher strata of society. But as time went on, and as we experienced the French Revolution and the Romantic movement, it became imperative for writers and artists to concentrate on not only on the fate of kings and queens and nobles and dukes, but on the role of the common man. During the Renaissance, when great emphasis was placed on a man-centered universe, it was John Milton, with bold strokes of his poetic genius, who created Satan, the embodiment of evil and yet an incarnation of the defiant spirit of man. Though here he is talking about God and the angels, the spirit of man is very aptly reflected when in the statement of Satan, the mind is its own place and in itself can make a hell of heaven, a heaven of hell. With the advent of the Industrial Revolution and unprecedented technical advancement, new dimensions were added to the concept of a man-centered universe. With the theories of Karl Jaspers, Martin Heidegger, Soren Kierkegaard, it came to be understood that these writers, these philosophers, felt that man was a being with a passion for an eternal happiness. They pointed out that genuine critical dilemmas of the individual's life are not solved by intellectual exploration of the facts, nor of the laws of thinking about them. In the modern parlance, taking an American playwright whose statement I quoted at the beginning as my title, Great Drama is Great Question, Miller talks about the common man and finds him an apt subject for tragedy in its highest sense as kings were. Miller writes, I think the tragic feeling is evoked in us when we are in the presence of a character who is ready to lay down his life, if need be, to secure one thing, his sense of personal dignity. It may not be out of place to mention here how the exaltation of the average man helped the American drama come out of its heavy dependence on British plays, which typically reflected the attitudes and manners of upper classes. Likewise, when we move on to a playwright like Tennessee Williams, one thing I would like to mention here, that on February 23, 1983, the day of Tennessee Williams' death, the New York evening papers issued an impressive list of famous actors who had performed in his plays. These included Marlon Brando, Paul Newman, Eli Wallach, Tallulah Bankhead, Katharine Hepburn, Elizabeth Taylor, Montgomery Clift, and others. The connection between Williams and these near legends of film and stage establishes the playwright as one of the most important figures in 20th century drama. Williams once announced his intention to air all those closets, attics, and basements of human behavior that had previously been bolted in the dark, and what he usually found inside was guilt and desperation, the pain of individuals longing for intimacy but trapped in their own frailties and lies. He made a very characteristic pronouncement when he said, "You can't manufacture unreal people. You have to transmute their reality through your concept of them." A very significant point from the perspective of sustainable studies. Likewise, when we go down to a play, The Death of a Salesman by Arthur Miller, Miller, in his own words, tells about his protagonist. I don't say he is a great man. Willie Loman never made a lot of money. His name was never in the paper. He is not the finest character that ever lived, but he is a human being, and a terrible thing is happening to him. So, attention must be paid. He is not to be allowed to fall into his grave like an old dog. Attention must be finally paid to such a person. In another play, The Price, Miller stated, the car, the furniture, the wife, the children, everything has to be disposable, because you see, the main thing today is shopping. Alongside the writing, Miller's life demonstrates his faith in the ability of an individual to resist conformist pressures. All his life, he remained a staunch supporter of free speech. He stated, a good newspaper, I suppose, is a nation talking to itself. I would now like to share my experience of meeting August Wilson, one of the greatest dramatists in the African American pantheon, two-time Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright, and a giant of the contemporary American theater. When I was in Seattle at the University of Washington for my senior Fulbright tenure, I expressed my desire to meet August Wilson and, if possible, to interview him. I was told that August Wilson is very reticent, he hardly talks to people, but when I requested my friend Charles Johnson, who was my academic associate at the University of Washington, he said, let me talk to August Wilson and see. And within a week, we were pleasantly surprised when Charles Johnson rang us up and said that August Wilson had invited me and my wife Sunita for dinner at Broadway Grill. When we met him, we found a lot of warmth in him, and we felt quite comfortable in his formidable presence. He began to talk, and the conversation centered around his life. I asked him about an incident which I had heard about his leaving school at the age of 15, and I told him if he could say a few words about that experience. So he told me that at the age of 15, a teacher falsely accused him of plagiarizing his paper on Napoleon Bonaparte and said that he must tell her who helped him write that paper. When he said that you could check all the references, it is my own work, she refused to believe him and said that if you don't accept that this paper has not been written by you, I will give you a D grade. And if you accept that you have taken help from others, then maybe I'll consider your case more favorably. August Wilson told me that he took the paper from the teacher, tore it into bits, threw it into the waste bin, and walked out of school. But he also told me that out of school never meant that he stopped reading. He said he had a library card at the age of 5. His favorite haunt after he dropped out of school was the Carnegie Public Library, where through avid reading he discovered the joy and terror of remaking the world in his own image through the act of writing. He acknowledged the Black Power movement to be the kin in which I was fired and has much to do with the person I am today and the ideas and attitudes that I carry as part of my consciousness. He first got involved in theatre in 1968 at the height of a social tumult, as he thought he could use theatre as a tool to propagate his ideas and perpetuate the success of the black. He believed in the fact that black is beautiful, and he wanted to document Black American culture and histories. He created a cycle of each play being devoted to each decade of the 20th century, beginning with Ma Rainey's Black Bottom and ending with Radio Gulf. One of his pronouncements was very striking. I believe that race matters. That is the largest, most identifiable, and most important part of our personality. Race is also an important part of the American landscape. We cannot allow others to have authority over our cultural and spiritual products. We will not deny our history, and we will not allow it to be of little consequence, to be ignored or misrepresented. We reject any attempt to blot us out, to reinvent history and ignore our presence. We are black and beautiful. When I asked him if there were any common strand that links all his period plays and whether there was something called the universal element in them, he quickly remarked, all my plays are about love, honor, duty, betrayal, things humans have written about since the beginning of time. Writing to him, he said, is an experience that involves anguish and pain. When I write, he says, I try to leave some blood on the page. You can't get that stuff out of yourself without hurt. It's not therapy. It's more like revelation. Like his character Bynum in Joe Turner's Come and Gone, he seems to confess, I don't do it lightly. It costs me a piece of myself every time I do. So from all these instances, it is easy to gather how theatre offers us the real cosmos that the theatre, life in theatre or theatre in life represents. Talking about the same feelings about the relevance of theatres, I would like to mention what Girish Karnad, who recently passed away, who said in an interview that to have any value at all, drama must engage itself seriously with the contradictions that lie at the heart of the human situation in general and the society it addresses in particular. And since I have mentioned Girish Karnad, any one of you who has read Tughlaq could see that this is not merely a play about the king called Tughlaq, but it is a play which will remain of universal significance despite the passage of time and despite the changes that come in our own views of priorities. And with these words, I would like to emphasize once again that great drama is great questions, because whenever we find life, the questions which are there in the minds all the time bothering us, these the playwrights have access to, and they portray to us through the medium of the stage in whatever form, be it a third theatre, be it the epic theatre, be it the absurd theatre, or be it just the jatras or nautankis or whatever it is. So I feel that once we get to take interest in the various forms that drama takes place, we can use it to develop not only personalities in the classroom, but to make everyone aware of ideas that can change the world. I thank Amity University for giving me the invitation to visit their wonderful campus, and I'm sure that when time permits, I would love to be there again talking to the wonderful audience that is all around. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.